We're live.
Hey there, gang. Patrick King here. Today we're going to talk about introducing your horse to the shoulder in. And it doesn't matter if you're riding dressage or if you're riding in a Western discipline, the shoulder in is an important movement, concept, idea to teach your horse when we're talking about introducing the idea of collection. Shoulder in is one of those important pieces that's going to help us develop that collection in our horse. We would consider it kind of just one of those building blocks, and we can work shoulder in two different ways, right? We can work shoulder in a longer frame. That's going to help to build some strength in our horse, but it's also going to help to really supple the top line. And then we can work shoulder in connection with our horse to be introducing, again, more this idea of collection. Now, when we're starting with the shoulder in, it's a good idea to introduce it first from the ground. This way your horse has got the understanding and he's got the mobility through the body without having the restriction of having us on his back. Can you teach it first from their back? Sure, absolutely you can. But it's a lot easier for the horse to understand, and you run into, I find, a lot less frustrations if you start from the ground. So one of the things that we're going to start out with, I've got Bigfoot here. This is Bigfoot. I've got Bigfoot in a bridle. We could start this in the snaffle. We could start it in a cavesson. We could start it in a halter. It really doesn't matter too much. But I want to make sure that it's a snaffle bit to begin with whenever we're introducing this. If we were to try to introduce this with a shank bit or with a curb bit, we're going to run into trouble because of the way the pressure changes in the curb bit. It becomes sort of a compound pressure rather than a direct pressure this way. So that's something to keep in mind when you're introducing the shoulder in to your horse. So we're going to start out first. I'm going to be in front of him. And I'm going to work first just on unlocking his body. I'm going to ask him to step himself sideways here with a little direction from the stick. And you see how my hand comes up here on the cavesson, on the noseband of the bridle. It would be the same if this was the noseband of a halter or if we were working in a true cavesson. Doesn't really matter. And it's not in a pulling kind of a fashion. It's simply a direction saying, hey, here's a little bit your limit of, the forward movement that we can create. So in this position, the hindquarters begins to rotate around the nose. Right here, he's a little bit sticky there, so you saw him bulge a little in the shoulder and have a little bit of resistance. Now you see how loose this noseband is also. That's pretty important here because we don't want to be restricting or locking the jaw at all. So I'm going to ask him here again with the stick, just simply step himself around. Again, we can see a little bulge in the shoulder there. I'm going to ask that hind leg to catch up a little more there. And then we'll simply stop from the direction of the stick. We're going to do this on both sides. Or I'll throw the stick on the ground. I'm going to pick the stick up and ask his hind leg to step across. It's important to understand this is not a disengaging of the hindquarters. If you've done a lot of foundation work, you understand what the disengaging of the hindquarters is. In this movement, you'll notice that his front feet are tracking also. Instead of crossing across the body, that hind leg begins to cross toward the midline, in front of and heading toward the outside shoulder. The inside hind leg stepping towards the outside shoulder. And in this case, I'm drifting back a little to allow some of that movement. We'll work on moving and stopping. The first time you introduce this to your horse, you're liable to see some stickiness through the body, a little bit of overbending through the neck, and Bigfoot's showing us a little of that overbending anyway. There. So in this case, you'll feel the body start to really soften. The big thing to keep in mind when we're doing this is we want really slow to start with. If your horse is tense anywhere through their spine, if your horse is blocked in their limbs at all, in other words, they're kind of sticky in a shoulder or sticky in a hind leg, they're apt to try to rush. Rushing is the horse's normal way of trying to avoid the tension that they feel. It's a prey animal response. You feel tension, you feel tightness, rush, right? Or you hurry. It's the mobilization. In this, we want really slow. I talk often about being ridiculously slow because then if there's tension in the body, it helps the horse to feel that and then release that rather than just rushing through. So slow is super important. Once we've got that piece figured out, hi Rambo. Once we've got that piece figured out, we want to make sure that we've got our horse mobile, soft, and supple through the jaw. If we've got him soft and supple through the jaw, we work on little vibrations in the bit here, and you see him sort of yielding and responding. Okay, we've done some videos on jaw releases. Those are pretty important in here, and you can see he's soft and not carrying any tension in the jaw. The vibration on the bit here, if he were to get tense, it's a little vibration. It's not a bumping on the bit, because that'll cause your horse to brace. It's a little vibration, and that's enough to stimulate some mobility in the tongue and softness through the jaw. From here, I'm going to basically ask for the same movement that I just asked for from the front of him while my hand was on the noseband. But I'm going to stay here at the rein. I'm going to reach the stick back and ask that hind leg to step forward. Now in this position, I can choose where I want to head. I could walk on a circle, I could walk on the fence line, and we see how he's working more and more on stretching and reaching. And the first time you do this with your horse, you might find them all over the place. You might find them all over the place with their posture as they figure out that movement. And that's okay. Hang in there with them until they feel confident and they feel steady, right? Once we've got that figured out with our horse, and that could take some time. It might take you several days of doing this with your horse until he starts to feel confident. And that's all right. Maybe it'll take 5 minutes, maybe it'll take 5 days. Either way, it's important to develop his confidence with this. Confidence is not something that we can rush. We have to develop it. Once we've got that figured out, we'll ask for that movement and we'll begin to connect the outside rein. This is where we start to change our horse's balance and change the degree of engagement from the hind leg. If I've got him stepping in a bit of a shoulder-in posture here, and I start to connect the outside rein, you'll see the base of his neck begin to lift, and you'll see the hind leg start to step and track a little bit deeper. The job of my inside rein right here, in this case my right hand, is to help keep him soft and seeking forward that bridle. If your horse becomes tense, a vibration again of the bit will help to mobilize the jaw and help to relax the horse. If you find him tense, that you need to work on that relaxation piece, allow that outside rein to come out, allow him to come back into that stretching idea. The second function of my inside rein in this case is to help keep that inside bend as I'm going. It's important that my horse stays bent somewhat around me in a very gentle arc. Again, now the outside rein, the job of that is to encourage a greater degree of connection and engagement through that hind leg. Good. So as we do this, it's common, I'll kind of allow this to become a mistake here. As we do this, it's common for our horse to start looking off the other way. That's not a shoulder in anymore. In the shoulder in, the spine stays consistent in the bend. If that happens, we need to work a little bit more on keeping that bend through the inside rein, and maybe for a little while soften up some on that outside rein to allow the horse to find the confidence in the stretch, in the reaching of the top line as we start to connect the hind leg. We'll show you here what this looks like along the fence in 2 different postures. We're going to start out in the stretching posture. You see how he's slightly bent into me with a nice long frame. Good man. I'm going to change sides here. I'll have my camera person walk down the other end there. We'll show you from this side how this is going to look then with a bit more connection on the outside rein. I'm going to start in the stretch, and then I'm going to simply draw down slightly on that outside rein. And we see how the base of his neck begins to lift, and the hind leg starts to step a bit deeper. When I'm connecting, you're all right. Good man. When I'm connecting the outside rein, it's important to understand the amount of pressure that's involved there, or the amount of contact. It's not a pulling down on the rein. If you're pulling down on the rein, your horse isn't relaxed through the top line. Your horse probably isn't mobile and supple through the jaw either. When I take the outside rein into contact, I'm simply keeping the rein here slightly in front of the withers, and it's a light contact drawing down. And you can see Bigfoot here, when I draw down on that, the base of his neck starts to lift, because he understands what this means. This is something this horse has done several times. Your horse may take a little bit of time to get that piece figured out, but stay soft with the connection of that outside rein. It's important when we're introducing the shoulder in with our horse. Again, doing it here from the ground is going to be, I think, the easiest way for them to start understanding this. It's going to help you to feel the spots where your horse might have tension in the body. Oftentimes, if they're tense in the back or the neck, you're going to struggle with this, so take it really slow. If you get it figured out from the ground, you'll have a better idea of how your horse is going to understand and translate that into the saddle. We're going to go grab another horse and show you how this works. Thanks, gang.